Fawn is an orphan nobody hell-bent on making a name for himself with the help of his pet whale. He has spent countless years clawing his way to the top, but just when his dream is about to come true, he is killed by his own pet and reborn as a penniless, ugly loser. When Fawn opens his eyes, he finds himself in the middle of the forest, and miraculously he is still in one piece, although his clothes are different for some reason. He checks himself to see if he is still bonded with his whale, Nian, but sadly, it looks like his pet is gone for good. For now, he needs to figure out where he is and think of a way to get home, so he stumbles down to a nearby river to get a drink of water. However, when he sees his reflection in the water, he realizes that his face is way uglier than it used to be. He starts panicking and tries to figure out what could have caused this, but all the commotion draws attention to him, and eventually, a group of armed soldiers track him down. Fawn is confused and wonders why soldiers showed up all of a sudden, but before he could even say a word, they all draw their swords on him and take him into custody. Before all this, Fawn used to be the leader of the fast-growing Lianxiao Pavilion sect, and his only dream in life was to raise his sect to A class in the league rankings, and he was really close to achieving that dream. All he needed to do was win his next match in the sect tournament to prove himself. On the day of the tournament, as Fawn was leaving for the tournament, he was greeted by all his sect members, and they all wished him luck in his upcoming battle. Fawn thanked them for their support, but he needed to hurry so he wouldn't be late for his match. The A-Class promotion tournament is a big deal on this continent, so there are many influential people here who are against the idea of an unknown sect like Fawn's being allowed to participate. However, there are also people who are in favor of his participation, like the master of the Bai family. He knows that Fawn was originally born into a very reputable family that tragically met its end years ago, leaving Fawn as the only survivor. Yet despite this setback, Fawn was able to build a new sect from the ground up, and in just a few short years, his Lianxiao Pavilion has already risen to B class. Such rapid growth is almost unheard of, but the reason Fawn is so strong is because he has a deep and profound understanding of the spiritual pets that exist in this world. Soon the tournament begins, so Fawn steps out into the arena, and with a wave of his hand, he summons his giant whale pet, Nian. His opponent is impressed by Fawn's display because it is clear that he has put a lot of work into cultivating his pet, but he isn't the only one with an impressive pet. Master Han clasps his hands to form a ball of fire, and from that fire, he summons his giant ape pet so he can compete on equal ground with Fawn. He is eager to see what Fawn can do, so as the match begins, both pets charge at each other and clash in the middle of the ring. The ape delivers a devastating uppercut to Nian, but Nian quickly recovers and retaliates with a high-pressure water blast. Fawn then instructs Nian to attack Hong directly, so Hong is forced to run and dodge until the ape grabs Nian by the mouth and starts swinging it around the stadium. The organizers really should have invested in a barrier or something because the wind from Nian's tail alone is causing a lot of trouble for the spectators, and when the ape throws the whale, it totally would have squished all those people if Fawn hadn't regained control in time. He then flies into the air with Nian and prepares to use one of his special moves, but Hong was expecting it, so as Nian water attacks, Hong and his ape are able to block and evade with ease. The ape then flies into the sky, and it must have filled its ultimate bar or something because it unlocks a new form and throws a fire fist straight at Fawn and Nian. Some of Fawn's supporters are starting to get worried because that giant fist looks pretty intimidating, but Fawn isn't worried. He came into this fight fully aware of how skilled Hong is, however he's still confident that he can win because he has a special trick up his sleeve. He performs a technique to ascend his whale to its second form, and as the fire fist approaches, Nian swallows a whole. The ape keeps attacking, but with Fawn's skill, Nian is able to swallow the energy of all the attacks until it finally spits it back at the ape. But just when it looked like Fawn was about to win, something strange began happening to Nian. Its body began to decay right before Fawn's eyes, and it suddenly started rampaging through the stadium. Fawn has no idea what's going on, but he can't let Nian hurt innocent people, so he tries to cancel his summon. But for some reason it isn't working, and as soon as Nian realizes that Fawn is trying to unsummon it, it turned towards around and swallowed Fawn whole. Back to the present, Fawn ended up getting locked away in a dungeon, but on his way here, he managed to gather some useful information. It has been a year since the incident at the sect tournament, so the whole world believes that Fawn lost his life to his own pet. And technically speaking, they are right. Fawn indeed died that day, but before the tournament, he received a forbidden scroll from a mysterious masked man. The man informed him that this is a reincarnation scroll, and if Fawn were to suffer a fatal injury while in possession of this scroll, then a year later, the scroll will transport his soul into the body of a healthy person who recently died. That means the previous owner of this body died in that forest, at which point Fawn's soul took over, but Fawn still has no idea who the original owner of this body was or what crime he committed to make him a wanted man. Fawn is also curious about the circumstances that led to his death because his whale had never disobeyed him before, so someone must have sabotaged him. Either way, he's going to need to get out of here if he wants to gather more information, so he tries summoning the spiritual pets of this body to see if they can help. However, all he gets is a poodle and a cactus. This isn't looking good for him, but he wants to remain optimistic, so he asks them to show him their special abilities. However, much to Fawn's disappointment, the only special move the poodle knows is how to piss on the floor. As for the cactus, it can create long vines which it can then use to restrain people, and thankfully this ability seems somewhat useful, but there's no way he can escape like this. A few moments later, Fawn hears a guard approaching, so he tells the pets to return to his body before they get caught. The guard opens the cell door and tells Fawn that Miss Bai wants to see him in her chambers, but as soon as the guard sets foot in the cell, he is revolted by the stench of the poodle piss on the ground. Fawn tries to cover it up and says he was the one who pissed on the floor, but considering the distance, the guard finds that hard to believe. However, it's not the guard's job to worry about where Fawn pisses, so he tells him to just hurry up because Bai is waiting for him. Along the way, Fawn tries asking the guard why this bad lady wants to see him because considering how he was arrested, he is worried that he might get tortured, but the guard doesn't answer any of his questions. They eventually arrive at Bai's room, so the guard knocks on the door and tells her that he has brought the prisoner as she requested. Bai is pleased, so she tells the guard to leave Fawn here and return to his duties, but while the guard wasn't paying attention, Fawn managed to untie his hands. Although his chances of escaping still aren't great, so he pretends that he is still restrained. He then walks into Bai's room and finds her waiting for him while she drinks a cup of tea. She calls him Liu Fengmeng, which is the name of the original owner of this body, and asks him if he knows why she chose to keep him alive. Fawn has no idea what Liu did to make someone like Bai mad, so he tries playing it safe and asks if she's going to give him a second chance to make up for his mistakes. However, the mistake in question is the fact that Liu grabbed Bai's melons in front of all the members of her sect. Fawn had nothing to do with that, but Bai doesn't know he reincarnated into Liu's body, and even if he told her, she probably wouldn't believe him anyway, so he tries apologizing to see if she will forgive him. However, Bai has no intention of forgiving him. She tells him that the only reason he isn't dead already is because she wants to make him suffer the same humiliation she felt, so she plans to make Fawn her slave and mess with him for the rest of his life. Fawn really doesn't like the sound of that, so he starts slowly backing away from Bai while trying to convince her that he would be a terrible slave. He eventually makes it to the door and he thinks he might actually be able to get away, but just as he is about to leave, Bai says she never gave him permission to go outside, so as punishment, she attacks him with her spiritual pet. Fawn manages to block the initial attack, but then Bai sends her snake out to attack him in its true form. Bai is disappointed that Fawn died so quickly because she thinks there's no way he could have survived, but it turns out that Fawn is still in one piece, and he has brought out his pets so he can fight back. Although the sight of such weak-looking pets makes her laugh, she can't believe Fawn really thinks a pet like that can stand up to her snake, so she intends to prove her superiority and orders the snake to attack. Fawn needs to do something too, so he orders the poodle Juan to charge forward. At first it looks like Juan is doomed to become snake food, but then Fawn takes control of Juan's movements and all of a sudden he's breaking ankles left and right. Bai can't believe that a poodle is actually outrunning her snake, but Fawn has even more tricks up his sleeve. The cactus is in position, so Fawn gives the order for it to catapult itself at Bai's snake, while Juan has it distracted. The cactus launches itself right into the side of the snake's head, and now both Juan and the cactus are running around and confusing the snake. Bai is amazed that Fawn is capable of controlling two pets at the same time with such skill, but she still has a plan in mind. She tells her snake to spin around really fast to knock Juan and the cactus away, and once the snake is free from the cactus's vines, it follows it through the air and eats it. Bai celebrates because she thinks she has won, but this was actually all part of Fawn's plan, so he takes control of the cactus, and from inside the snake's mouth, he ties the snake up. And for some reason, the snake is enjoying it. Now that the snake has been restrained, Fawn tells Juan to use his ultimate move, so Juan runs up the snake's body and pisses all over the snake and Bai. Bai can't believe Fawn just did that, and she is so enraged that she activates her snake's second phase just to get her revenge. All of a sudden, Bai's snake engulfs itself in fire to burn the vines, and the cactus is nearly scorched to death as a result. The snake then swats Juan away, and he's down for the count, so Fawn recalls both of them to make sure they don't die. And now that Fawn's pets are out of the way, Bai decides to target Fawn as well, so her snake lunges forward, knocking him into the water. Fawn is on the verge of drowning, and he's starting to worry that he might die here. But then he notices something swim past his face, and it gives him a good idea. Back on the surface, Bai is using some of the pond water to wash the dog piss off her shoes when suddenly Fawn pops out of the water. She is surprised because she thought he would have drowned by now, but it looks like Fawn bonded with a catfish in the pond and made it one of his pets. Bai mocks him for being so desperate because everyone knows a catfish is an unreliable pet. Sure, it can be cultivated into a near-invincible whale, but after one of the whales went rogue and killed its master, its species was given the title of Master Killer. Fawn tries to tell her it wasn't the whale's fault and that someone sabotaged it, but Bai has no reason to believe him. And even if she did, it's not like it would change anything because all the catfishes in the nation have been exterminated under the League's orders. The only reason there's a catfish here is because Bai's brother likes to collect pets from extinct species, and this may very well be the last catfish on the continent. Besides, the only one who knows how to bring out the true potential of the catfish is the master of the Lingxiao Pavilion, but he's long dead, so catfishes are practically useless now. Fawn refuses to listen to Bai's catfish slander any longer, so he tells her to shut up, and Bai takes offense to this, so she decides to finish him off on the spot. She sends her snake after Fawn, but Fawn is able to catch its fangs and hold it in place long enough for his new catfish to get into position. Nyan swims through the air until it is behind the snake, and on Fawn's command, it bites down on the snake's tail and begins sucking. Bai can't believe what she's seeing because the only one capable of such a technique is the deceased master of the Lingxiao Pavilion, yet Fawn's catfish manages to suck her snake until it has been completely devoured. Now, Bai is completely defenseless, and she has no means to stop Fawn from escaping anymore, so he gets out of the pond and makes a run for it. Before long, the guards from Bai's family are alerted of Fawn's escape, so some wolves are sent out after him. And if you've ever been chased by wolves, you'd know it's not very fun. Fawn has managed to evade capture so far, but he won't last much longer, so as he approaches the edge of the mountain, he comes up with a daring idea. He's going to jump. He knows there's no way the guards will be crazy enough to jump after him, but he still needs to think of a way to survive the fall, so he summons Cactus and uses its vines to grab onto the peak of one of the rock formations. He then uses his momentum to swing himself all the way up onto the next mountain, and with the distance between them, the guards stand no chance of catching Fawn now. The guards spend the entire night looking for Fawn, but they can't find him, so the next morning they return to Bai's compound to tell her the bad news. They couldn't find so much as a footprint anywhere on the mountain, so they believe Fawn might have fallen to his death at some point. However, Bai doesn't seem so convinced. Fawn completely disgraced her, so there's no way she can just accept that he died in the mountains. She yells at her guards for being unreliable and demands that they go out and keep looking for Fawn because she wants him dead or alive. Just then, Bai's brother arrives because he heard news of the incident that happened here, so he asks Bai to tell him the name of the man who caused all this trouble. Meanwhile, Fawn wakes up to a bird standing on his face and he is perfectly fine, but he was really hoping that everything that happened last night would turn out to be a dream. Back at Bai's house, she has just finished telling her brother everything that Fawn did to her, including the fact that he used a catfish to devour her snake. She pleads with her brother to avenge her, but Bai's brother couldn't care less about her petty grudge against Fawn. He is much more upset at the fact that Fawn stole the limited edition catfish that he got for his rare species collection. Bai gets mad that her brother isn't taking her seriously, and she's upset that he didn't offer her the catfish when it's so strong. However, Bai's brother tells her the catfish species isn't particularly strong. In fact, there's nothing special about it aside from the innate ability to devour things, but it only works on targets that are idle for a certain amount of time. Even when they've evolved into a whale, it isn't especially powerful, so by all metrics, catfishes are completely useless in combat, but there's one exception to that rule. A catfish under the control of Master Fawn Lingxiao can be incredibly formidable, but that man is dead, and no one knows the secrets of his technique. Speaking of Fawn, he is currently cultivating the catfish on the mountaintop while thinking about all the events that led him here. He failed to achieve his goals in his past life, and the entire legacy he worked so hard to build has been ruined by that incident. However, he refuses to give up, and no matter how long it takes, he swears he will rise to the top of the League and prove himself to the world. And the first step in Fawn's plan is to reunite with his sect members, so he heads to one of the League's branches and asks to rent out the fastest pet they have. Normally, you would have to pay a large sum to rent out fast pets like a shadow panther or a blue hedgehog, but Fawn says his pavilion has a contract with the League, so he's allowed to rent out pets for free. The attendant is more than happy to help, but he is going to need to confirm which pavilion Fawn belongs to, so he asks him to perform his pavilion's signature dance. Fawn was really hoping he wouldn't have to do this because the dance is really embarrassing, but he swallows his pride and performs it anyway. The attendant thinks it's hilarious, but Fawn tells him to just hurry up and look for his pavilion's listing already. However, when the attendant finally finds it, he tells Fawn that the Lianxiao Pavilion has been removed from the members' list. Fawn died in May last year, and as a result of the death of its master, the Lingxiao Pavilion was demoted to C class. Then a few months later, the League issued an order to exterminate all catfish pets, and since the catfish was the pavilion's signature pet, it was demoted yet again to D class. Finally, a few months after that, they were attacked and robbed by mass sects, and due to the heavy losses that the pavilion suffered, they were subsequently removed from the League registry. Fawn can't believe all that happened in the span of a single year, but if all this is true, then he needs to hurry back to the pavilion as fast as this pig can take him. But before that, he needs to stop at a pet service center so he can take care of Tuan and Cactus. Fawn arrives at the service center, and upon entering, he goes to talk to one of the receptionists at the front desk. She asks him how she can help, so Fawn explains that 2 of his pets were severely injured a while ago, so he would like to get them fixed up as soon as possible. The receptionist takes his pets and tells Fawn he can come back to pick them up later on, so Fawn decides to do a little more shopping. He goes to buy a defense scroll so he can train his pets, and luckily, he managed to arrive just in time to receive the final defense scroll that the shop had in stock. However, just before the clerk could hand it to Fawn, a man walks in with a tied-up girl and demands to buy the scroll instead. The clerk apologizes for the inconvenience, but Fawn was here first and store policy says it's first come, first served. The man doesn't like being told no, so he becomes belligerent and threatens to burn Fawn to a crisp if he doesn't get what he wants. This is really bad for Fawn since he doesn't have his pets with him to defend himself, but just before Xu could begin his attack, he recognizes the face of Liu, and he was apparently good friends with him before Fawn took over. He pulls up a chair and asks how Liu has been since it has been a few days since he last heard from him, but Fawn doesn't want to explain that Xu's friend is actually dead and he took over Liu's body, so he makes up a fake story and says he has been sleeping at home. He wants to end this conversation as soon as possible so he doesn't get himself into trouble, but all of a sudden, Xu asks Liu if something is wrong with him, because the Liu he knows would never pass up an opportunity to drink, so it's odd that he hasn't even attempted to down any liquor yet. Fawn tries to make up an excuse and claims that he just drank too much last night, so he doesn't feel like drinking anymore, but Xu refuses to take no for an answer. He says hanging out is no fun unless they both get drunk together, and in fact, he makes a bet with Fawn and says that if he can beat him in a drinking competition, then Xu will give Fawn whatever he wants. Fawn doesn't have much of a choice here, so he decides to go along with it and hesitantly takes a bowl of alcohol to drink. The reason he is so hesitant to drink any alcohol is because in his past life, whenever he drank even a single glass of alcohol, he would turn into a bumbling idiot and would constantly humiliate himself. However, this time, even after downing dozens of drinks, Fawn is perfectly fine, but Xu, on the other hand, is totally wasted. Fawn is surprised that Liu's body has this much resistance to alcohol, but that aside, he clearly won the bet, so he tells Xu that he will be leaving now, and he is taking the scroll with him. Xu has no complaints since he is too drunk to care. But as Fawn is walking away, he notices the girl who Xu was treating as a slave, and he feels bad for her, so he decides to set her free. He takes the bag off her head, and as he is untying her, he warns the girl to stay away from people like Xu, because they are bad news. Fawn later leaves the service center because he has business to attend to, and now that he has taught his whale a defensive bubble skill, and he has healed the other 2, he is prepared to pay some old friends of his a visit, but as he is leaving, the girl he saved from Xu seems to be watching him. Meanwhile, over in the Lianxiao Pavilion, Guling rushes into Duan Yi's room to warn him that some people have come to attack them. Duan takes the threat very seriously, so he runs outside and finds a gang of miscreants just standing there menacingly. The leader of the gang says that it would be a shame to waste such prime real estate like this on the likes of the pavilion, so from this day forth, he claims this land will belong to his Hard Rock gang. And if the pavilion members want to live, they had better pack up and leave before he loses his patience. The gang leader seems really confident that he won't challenge because the Lingxiao Pavilion is in severe decline, but Duan Yi tells them that just because their status has dwindled doesn't mean they are weak. He summons his shade cat Jaime, and 2 of the gang members try to attack him with their lizard and porcupine. So they make the lizard launch the porcupine at the cat. However, Jaime is simply too fast, so she jumps out of the way, and as soon as she gets the opportunity, she dices the porcupine into pieces. The lizard then tries to attack her, but it's too slow, so she's able to sneak up behind it and slice its tail off. The gang leader is starting to get mad, so he decides to use his own beetle pet to attack since it is fast, but apparently it wasn't fast enough because Jaime rips right through its body in an instant. Duan begins insulting the gang for thinking they were strong enough to defeat his shade cat, but while Duan is monologuing, the leader secretly instructs the beetle to fire its horn, but not at Duan. Instead, he aims straight for Guling to make Duan and Jaime lose their focus. Jaime immediately rushes back to save Guling and destroys the horn, but in the process she lets her guard down, so the lizard is able to sneak up from behind and chomp down on Jaime's body. Meanwhile, Fawn has just arrived at the pavilion and he is glad to finally be home. But he is a bit shocked by how decrepit this place has become in the year he was gone. None of the maintenance work has been done and the front gates are wide open, but that's the least of the problems here. He hears a commotion in the courtyard, so he goes to check it out, and to his horror, he finds a lizard chewing down on Jaime's body. The lizard then throws Jaime away once it is done with her, and Duan jumps into the air to catch her body, but he ends up crashing into a pot as a result. Duan begs Jaime to hold on so he can get her treated, but it's already too late. She has lost so much blood that there's no chance of recovering, and a few moments later, Jaime dies in Duan's arms. Now all the pets of the pavilion members have been killed, leaving them completely defenseless, so the gang leader orders everyone to get out of here immediately, or he might consider doing something terrible to them. As he says this, he starts reaching for Gu Ling, but before he could hurt her, his lizard gets splashed with a strange yellow liquid. The gang leader looks up to see where the liquid came from, and he finds Juan standing on one of the rooftops, but he has no idea how a little pup managed to get here. Just then, Fawn announces himself and asks the gang leader what he thinks he is doing here, but the gang leader tells Fawn to mind his own business because he thinks Fawn is some random nobody who wants to play hero. But when Gu Ling looks at the stranger, something about him reminds her of her former master. Fawn refuses to let a bunch of gang members take over the land he worked hard to earn, so he sends one in to attack, but the gang leader thinks Fawn must be stupid because there's no way a puppy could ever compare to a dragon lizard. He sends his lizard out to cut Juan down, but to his surprise, Juan is actually able to parry the attack. This makes no sense to him because the lizard should be several times stronger than the puppy, but the surprises don't end there because Fawn instructs Juan to use his new special move, so he runs forward and headbutts the lizard in the stomach. The gang leader can't believe a puppy actually managed to defeat his dragon lizard, but it was all thanks to Fawn's careful planning. Juan's urine attack is called Feeble Urine, and it has the ability to make anyone who gets covered in it several times weaker, so as soon as the lizard got sprayed at the start of the fight, Fawn had already won. The gang leader still doesn't understand how this could have happened to him, but he refuses to lose after coming this far, so he orders all his men to summon their backup pets. The gang members do as instructed, and they plan to attack Fawn directly to make him pay for humiliating them, but Fawn isn't too worried. He pretends to be scared and runs out of the gate to lure the pets outside, and the gang members eagerly follow him because they think they really have Fawn cornered. However, when they get outside, they can't find Fawn, and they realize all their pets are gone. Just then, Fawn speaks up and tells Nyan to thank the kind men for giving him so many tasty pets to eat, and as soon as the gang members realize that Nyan is a catfish, they start freaking out. The League ordered all catfishes to be exterminated months ago, so they threaten to report Fawn for possessing a catfish, but Fawn threatens to just have Nyan eat them alive if they report him, so the gang members apologize for their earlier statements and leave because they don't want to die. Once the gang members are gone, Hu Ling comes out because she wants to thank Fawn for all his help. However, to her surprise, as soon as Fawn sees her, he gives her a big hug, saying he missed her a lot. Of course, Gu Ling still has no idea who this guy is, if she doesn't know how to react to this sudden hug. She asks Fawn if she has met him somewhere before, so he's about to explain that he is Master Fawn Lian Xiao, and that he reincarnated into this body, but then he remembers what happened with his whale. Someone must have sabotaged him that day to get him killed, and he still has no idea who did it, so until he finds more clues, he can't reveal his true identity to anyone. He decides to introduce himself as Liu Fengmeng for now and apologizes for hugging Gu Ling out of nowhere, but now that the bandits are gone, he tells Gu Ling that they need to go check on the others inside. Gu Ling is certain that she has never met Liu before, but every time she looks at him, he exudes the same aura as her master, and she can't figure out why. As Fawn walks back in, Gu Ling introduces him to everyone as the man who saved them from the gang members, but while they are all grateful after everything that has happened, none of them are in much of a talking mood. Especially Duan after Jaime's death. Jaime was the first pet he ever received from Fawn, so they've been practically inseparable for years, but now that she's gone, Duan sees no reason to continue being a pet cultivator, so he says he is leaving. Fawn remembers how Duan was the first person to join his pavilion back when Fawn first established it, and even though Fawn was a new master at the time and had no achievements under his belt, Duan still believed the pavilion could become one of the best on the continent, but all that has changed now. All the other pavilion members also lost their pets in the battle, so there's no point in remaining here any longer. Fawn tries to stop him and says he can help them rebuild, but Duan laughs in his face and asks what a stranger like him could possibly do to help them. Gu Ling begs Duan not to go because they still need to carry on their master's will, but Duan reminds her that Fawn Lian Xiao is dead, and he was the only thing holding the pavilion together. so without him, they are nothing. One by one, the other pavilion members also begin walking out because there's nothing left for them here, and they've lost all will to keep fighting. Fawn pleads with them to wait because if they just give him some time, he is sure he can resolve all their problems and restore the pavilion to its former glory. But none of them have any faith in him, so as much Fawn doesn't want to accept it. This truly is the end of the Lingjiao Pavilion. By the next morning, there are only 3 members left in the pavilion, and Gu Ling is saddened by the way things turned out. After their master's death, Duan was next in line to become the master of the pavilion because he had the greatest skills among all of them. But now that he has quit, they need to appoint a new master, and Tsai knows the perfect person for the job. At first, Fawn thinks she is referring to him, but Tsai was actually talking about appointing Gu as the new master of the pavilion, who doesn't think she's qualified to hold such a position. But since everyone insists on it, she agrees to become the master for now. Gu's picture is then put up under the master plaque, and as the new master, the others ask her what the next step for their pavilion will be. Before Gu could even say anything, Fawn speaks up and says they need to go catch some more spirit pets, but then he remembers that he isn't the master here anymore, so he apologizes for speaking out of turn. Gu agrees with Fawn's plan since all of the pavilion's pets were killed during the attack yesterday, so she pulls out a map so she can find a good place to start searching for pets. However, all the good habitats on the map have already been picked clean, so there's no way they can find any good pets nearby. Just then, Fawn speaks up and says he has a good place in mind, so later that day, everyone follows him to the secret habitat he was talking about. But when they get there, it's more crowded than Walmart on Black Friday. There's no way they'd be able to find any good pets here, but Fawn tells them this isn't the place he was talking about. He leads them further into the forest, and after making sure they weren't followed, Fawn jumps off the edge of the cliff. The others are worried that he might have hurt himself, but Fawn is perfectly fine and tells them to come down as well. He uses cactus to carefully lower everyone into the ravine, and there he shows them the entrance to his secret habitat. It is an underground cave, and since no one else should know about it yet, Fawn is confident that the Lord should still be here. Chexa gets confused when Fawn mentions a Lord, so he explains that Lord is the title given to some pets depending on their innate strength. For example, if a cat and a tiger were both level 3, then the tiger would still be stronger than the cat. Most of the pets around here are soldier class, so they are rather timid, but Lord class pets are very aggressive, so he warns everyone to be careful if they encounter one. Just then, Yui spots a flaming pet in the distance, so she asks Fawn what class it is. After taking one look, Fawn can tell that it is a 3-tailed firefox, but for a firefox to have 3 tails, it would need to be in the second phase of soul bonding, which means this fox has a master and its master must be nearby. Fawn immediately warns everyone to be careful because there's someone else in this cave, but before any of them can respond, Fawn gets attacked from behind. He managed to avoid getting hit, but the attacker tells him and the others that this is his turf, and if they don't leave right now, he will show them no mercy. He is trying to scare them away so he can capture the Lord for himself, but Fawn simply laughs in his face and says he could never beat them in a fight with his weak little fox. The others join in and say they could wipe the floor with the guy's pet without even breaking a sweat, but remember, none of them have any pets right now, so they are totally bluffing. Getting into a fight right now would be terrible, so Fawn came up with a plan and told everyone to pretend to be strong and bloodthirsty so they can scare him off. And the plan is working perfectly, mostly because the guy was weirded out by Xi's tonguing, but either way, it was enough to get Su to rethink his actions, so he decides to leave Fawn's group alone. Just then, Fawn feels an ominous pressure in the cave, and so he tells the others that the Lord has appeared. But before they could even think of a plan of action, Su and his firetails start running straight for the Lord. Fawn and the others chase after him, and when they finally reach the Lord, Fawn warns them to be careful, because it looks like it is in the mature stage, meaning it already has a unique skill. Su tells the others to stay out of his way while he subdues the panda, and Fawn doesn't intend to interfere since Su technically got here first. Su tells Firetails to attack, so it lunges at the panda, but before it could attack, the panda's horn begins to glow, and it shoots a laser that hits Su in the chest. All the color begins to drain from Su's body, and he has no idea what's going on, but a few moments later, the panda then fires a laser at Fawn. Fawn tries his best to dodge, but despite his best efforts, the laser still touches his hair, so he warns everyone else to go and hide before they get hit too. Fawn's body then begins to develop purple patches, and he is worried that he might have been poisoned, so he quickly summons Juan and asks him to use his detoxifying urine skill. Juan is confused because he doesn't see anything wrong with Fawn, but he does as instructed anyway and splashes Fawn in the face. However, the detoxifying urine seems to have no effect, so Fawn just took a face full of piss for nothing. The panda then fires another laser aimed at the Firetails, and it looks like it left a severe wound, but when Su goes to check on his pet, he realizes there isn't actually any damage. It's more like someone painted over his pet's body, and it's the same with Fawn because despite looking poisoned, he feels perfectly fine. He soon realizes that the panda's ability is to absorb colors and create illusions to distract its enemies, and while that doesn't sound too dangerous at first, it's really hard to keep track of your opponent when they are able to camouflage themselves perfectly. On the bright side, since the color changing doesn't do any damage, they just need to worry about avoiding the panda's melee attacks. Sue tells Fairytails to keep dodging the panda's attacks, but then the panda makes his bamboo invisible, so Firetails isn't able to see it in time to dodge. Sue is worried about Firetails' safety, so he asks Fawn for some help and promises to share the panda with him equally. Whatever that's supposed to mean. Fawn doesn't trust Sue, but he decides to help him anyway, so he asks Fawn to splash the panda with his feeble pea. The pea should have weakened the panda, so Fawn summons Cactus and asks it to bind the panda. However, they soon realize it was an illusion, and the real panda comes out of nowhere to kick the cactus away. It then creates a blinding flash of light with its horn, and by the time Fawn and Sue can see again, the panda has disappeared. They both stay alert since the panda might be hiding with his color control again, and as soon as Firetails spots something moving, it jumps into attack. However, it turned out to be a trap, and a second later, the panda drops from the ceiling to smash Firetails into the ground. It then uses its ultimate technique and shifts the color in the room to overload Fawn and Sue's brains. And while they are confused, it proceeds to beat them up, but Tuan still doesn't understand what's going on. Anyone caught in the panda's range should be disoriented by the shifting colors, but Tuan is color blind, so to him it looks like Fawn and Sue are just messing around. It eventually gets tired of watching its master lose to a panda, so while the panda isn't watching, Juan sneaks up from behind and smacks it in the head. And once the panda is on the ground, he pees on it to assert dominance. Fawn is shocked that Juan was able to beat the panda so easily, but he is glad that they finally caught the Lord. However, a moment later, Sue grabs the panda and starts running away. Fawn and the others chase after it, but Sue pulls out a dandelion pet and uses it to fly away, so there's no way they'll be able to catch him now. Fawn is disappointed that they wasted so much effort today and another Lord won't spawn here for a long time, so he suggests they just go to the market tomorrow to find some pets for everyone. Later that night, Sue carries the panda to the Temple of the East Sect, and as he arrives at the gate, he tells the guard that he is here to see Mr. Yo. The guard leads Sue to Yo, and Yo is pleasantly surprised that Sue was capable of capturing a lord all on his own. However, Sue didn't come here for empty compliments, he just wants Yo to keep his end of the bargain and release his pet. While Sue isn't paying attention, something seems to slip into his shadow, but he is too focused on Yo to notice. Yo tells his men to bring out the Ice Tails, and Sue is glad to see his pet again, but as soon as he tries to free Ice Tails, Yo's men try to capture Fire Tails. Sue demands to know what's going on here because this wasn't part of the deal, but Yo never intended to let Sue reclaim his Ice Tails. He orders his men to capture Sue, but Sue isn't a weakling, so he's able to fight them off with the help of Fire Tails. However, Yo then summons his pet, and from Sue's shadow, a giant figure emerges before slamming Sue's face into the ground. The next day, Fawn and the others head into town to buy a pet, but while Fawn is busy doing something else, the others spot a wanted poster for Liu Fengmeng in the middle of town. Gu tries to remain positive and says it might not be the same Liu who's helping them, so it would be best to keep it a secret for now and watch what he does to see if he really is a dangerous criminal. Just then, Fawn returns to the group and sees them huddled around the notice board, so he asks if something is wrong, and they all get startled. Everyone tells him they are fine though, and Fawn sees no reason to question it, so he tells everyone to hurry up so they can go buy some pets. But first they need money, so they head to the bank and Gu performs the pavilion's dance to access their account. But to her dismay, the teller tells her that someone withdrew all their money a few days ago. Gu breaks down in tears because she can't believe they got robbed of all their money, but then Fawn remembers that he was the one who withdrew that money when he was first reincarnated. Luckily, he didn't spend all of it, so he tells Gu he has some money they can use to shop for pets, although he decides to leave out the part about how he got it. The four of them then head out into the market, and as soon as they get there, Gu falls in love with this scent skipper. She thinks it's really cute, but it costs 20 tal, and they can't afford that right now. Yui immediately enters haggling mode and starts badgering the shopkeeper to reduce the price by calling the scent skippers ugly, dull, and useless. Eventually, she does manage to get a good deal for it, but at the cost of the scent skipper's self-confidence. After seeing Yui work her magic, Axe asks her for some help because she wants to get one of these pets, and with how goofy they look, Yui has all the ammunition she needs to bargain. Now both Axe and Gu have pets, but Yui hasn't chosen anything for herself yet, so they continue walking around the market. Suddenly, a man calls out to Yui and offers to sell her a new pet he just acquired, but the group immediately recognizes it as the panda that Sue stole from them yesterday. That panda is rightfully theirs, so Fu demands that the shopkeeper return it immediately, but while the shopkeeper knows it's a stolen pet, he isn't worried because he recognizes the uniform of the Liangeo Pavilion, and he knows they are too weak to be a threat to him. He is part of the East Sect under Yo, and this isn't the first time the East Sect has robbed the pavilion, so Gu is starting to get angry. But the shopkeeper tells her she can't attack him because it's against the League's rules to use pets in public. That may be true, but the rules don't say anything about using a pet that doesn't have a master yet, so Xai approaches the panda and gives it an idea. After a few moments, she gets the shopkeeper's attention and tells him that the panda managed to escape while he was arguing with Gu, and the keeper starts panicking because Yo would kill him if he found out he lost the panda lord. He opens the cage to try to go after it, but when he tries crawling into the hole, he realizes it was all an illusion and the panda is still inside the cage. And as you can imagine, it is not happy. The shopkeeper gets knocked out in one punch, but the panda is still dangerous, so Fawn is worried it might hurt someone. However, Yui tells him he doesn't need to worry. She approaches the panda and tells him the story of how her sect has fallen into ruin, and the entire time she was powerless to help her friends. So she asks him to become her spiritual pet so they can both get strong together. The panda sympathizes with her, so it agrees to become Yui's pet. But this is the first pet Yui has ever had, and she isn't familiar with the bonding process, so Gu explains how it's done and shows her the correct position. Once the ritual is complete, Yui has officially bonded with the panda lord and Fawn is happy for her, but a moment later, he notices Firetails tied up in the shop. From what he recalls, Sue really cared about Firetails, so Fawn finds it hard to believe that Sue would sell his pet so easily. Fawn releases the Fire and Ice Tails, and they tell him that Sue was captured and is being held hostage. Kexi asks Fawn if they should try to save him, but the East Sect is a lot stronger than they are, and their leader is as strong as a spirit general, so they are severely outmatched. However, Fawn says he knows of a way that they can beat the East Sect, so he tells everyone they should head home because he has something he wants to show them. Before Fawn died, he had hidden several upgrade pills under a tree, and with these pills, everyone will be able to make their pets stronger.